Yes. Yeah, I know it's coming towards the end of day 2, but I found it so enlivening and it's so fascinating and challenging and everything and stretching that I'm still raring to go. So hope you're all going to stay till either 22:15 or 21:15, depending on where you live or many other parts of the world. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Developing Ethical Maturity through Supervision. And we really are very lucky to have Pam McLean and Peter Hawkins, who are two very long-standing pioneers of supervision and coaching. Pam, who's based in the US, is a co-founder, as I'm sure you know, of the Hudson Institute of Coaching, with many years' experience as a clinical psychologist, master coach, coach supervisor, and contributor to the field, including as the author of several books. Peter, who's based in the UK, is also a much published author, professor emeritus at Henley Business School, co-dean of the Global Team Coaching Institute, and chair of Renewal Associates. He's in demand worldwide as a consultant, coach, supervisor, researcher, and writer. Both share the same vision that a central purpose of supervision is to develop the ethical capacity and maturity of practitioners. And they'd suggest that the ethical issues we're presented with constantly are there to provide us with our next stage of development as a coach, supervisor, and of course, human being. We can look forward to some creativity, some challenge over the next hour to help that development. Peter and Pam, welcome and thank you very much.
Thank you, Eve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter and I thought we might begin by sharing a little bit about why this topic is close to our own hearts. And, you know, I was in a session just a bit ago about ethical issues, coaching in Latin America, and I was so struck by the power of the layers of ethical when we talk about ethics in coaching, and so that was very much on the external challenges that are happening in different parts of the globe. Our conversation is taking you inward. We're going to look at the ethical maturity that can be cultivated through coach supervision. And you know what? Why this is close to my heart? I think first of all, my first journey into my adult years was as a clinical psychologist for many years. Anyone who's a psychologist on this call knows that supervision, while it's not a requirement, it's an expectation that you absolutely engage in this for the privilege of working with others. And so I came to it naturally to know that in the field of coaching, the same would apply. And so coach supervision is dear to my heart, and I think it is important for all of us to see it as a vehicle for cultivating our own growing maturity. Over to you, Peter. What makes it dear to your heart?
Well, part of it is the opportunity to partner with you, Pam, which we've done on a couple of occasions on supervision conferences and also out at the Hudson Institute out in California with you. And for me, having written about and been involved in supervision now for getting close to 50 years since I was first involved, I'm increasingly shocked. I'll give you one little story. I was supervising a doctorate on supervision, actually in psychology and psychotherapy and coaching. She was doing the doctorate, and she was looking at the experience of different supervisors who'd been through training. And one of the questions was, how did you handle ethical issues? And some of these really experienced supervisors said, well, I haven't had any to handle. And I was so shocked, because for me, every issue that gets brought to supervision has an ethical aspect to the issue. Yeah, everything that takes us to our learning edge there are different interests. There's the interest of the coachee, there's the interest of the employees who report to them, the organization, the customers, the investors. We are always dealing with multiple issues and interests that are in contention. And therefore, every issue, and I think for so long, and it's come up in the conference already, we've equated ethics with bad behavior or avoiding bad behavior. And the other thing that is close to my heart is, and we'll talk more about this, is one of the key pillars of supervision. We have the qualitative dimension, we have the resourcing dimension, but the third, the developmental leg of supervision. That every ethical dilemma is an opportunity to take ourselves to a learning edge where there isn't an easy answer. So every ethical dilemma is like a gift, not a problem to be solved, but a gift that takes us to something that needs connecting that we haven't yet found a way of connecting. And so that notion that of ethical dilemmas as a gift is so close to my heart, because that's what we all need to be working at, whether it's in coaching or in supervision. So I think this is a great opportunity. And the other, just one very quick thing, which is a lot of people I know online, seeing their faces, are interested in vertical development. And we'll mention this as well later on, is that most people don't realize that the really early work done in psychology and adult development about levels of adult maturity were all based on looking at the ability of a human being to deal with moral complexity. Work of Kohlberg and Lovinger. And it seems to me right now in the world, we are all being asked to deal with much greater moral complexity and ethical complexity. And if we're not doing that as coaches, if we're not doing that with our coachees and with those organizations, then we're not doing what the world needs right now. So with that, Pam, can we just briefly invite everyone online just to join us in this little inquiry session that we're going to do in many forms with you tonight, just to send to yourselves. I know some of you have been online all day, so just sit back in your chair, get your seat as far back as possible and your feet on the ground, just for a moment to close your eyes. And just take a real healing breath. Imagining you're breathing in up through the floor, through your feet, from the earth beneath you, up through your legs and your groin and your belly, into your heart. Expanding your heart and its capacity to embrace all that is. And then just to breathe out, pulling light from the ceiling above you and beyond that, from the sky, down through your head, your face, your throat, into your heart. And then as you say, take the second breath, I'm going to invite you to breathe in, to think of something that's happened for you in coaching or supervision that's taken you to your ethical learning edge. It's given you a dilemma. It's given you some choices you cannot reconcile. Just capture that moment. Perhaps it's a moment you would like to have taken to supervision but didn't, or would like still to take to supervision in this hour together. What were the choices that were going through your head? What was the frame you were looking at those choices through? How can you welcome that ethical challenge as a learning gift, opening the door to your next level of coach maturity? And then if you could open your eyes and just hold on to that notion, because we will be sharing it fairly shortly. But we're just going to go back to the slides and just set some context for this work before you share your situations in small breakout groups. So Pam, do you want to take us through how we're going to operate? You're on mute, Pam.
Someday we won't have to hear that anymore, will we? Hallelujah. So we're going to walk through a variety of ways to have these discussions to make them most meaningful for you. And so we're going to begin by giving you some food for thought, walking through a series of slides that review some of the research. Some of it will be known to you, some of it perhaps is new. And then we'll give you an opportunity in breakout rooms of 3 or 4 to share the very reflection that Peter just walked you through, an ethical issue that took you to your learning edge. And when we return, we might have time to hear a little bit about that from each of you. And then we're going to engage in a rotating fishbowl conversation. So we'll invite some of you to come into a conversation to continue to explore these learning edge dilemmas that you uncovered in these small groups. And we'll have a minute at the end to close out and see what you learned from our time together. So that's how we're going to proceed. Peter and I are going to walk through these slides right now. Food for thought only. Peter, take it away.
Thanks, Pam. So some of you know that we brought out in 2020 the 5th edition of Supervision in the Helping Professions, which keeps getting upgraded, hopefully, as we grow the lens of writing about this area. And in that, we talk about ethics as the first ethical responsibility is to help the supervisee ethically reflect on their practice from both internal and external perspectives, looking at how what they did and what they might do next matches up against their own values, the professional values, how it matches the cultural values of the coachee, the organizational values, the culture in which the work is happening, the country legal requirements. And so always we're having to look at ethics, not just personally or professionally, but systemically. And Pam, perhaps you could say a bit about that and how you've been developing that in terms of this nested system.
Yeah, so the notion that there are these nested systems, back to that great session I was in just a while ago, countries' laws, cultural context matters a lot. And I think we understand we're becoming much more aware of how ethics shift in cultures. And we as coaches need to be attuned to that. The organization's code of conduct. Any of us who spends a lot of time in organizations knows that we need to understand these elements and be inquiring about them so that it gives us a broader sense of the culture that we're working in. And of course, we know that EMCC, ICF, and likely others have a professional code of ethics. And then we come to the individual's ethics and values. This is our rudder. What do I know? How clear am I about my own values? And this, I think, for us as coaches is foundational. And we'll have a little time to explore that today as well. And then universal human rights. This is most definitely on our mind more than ever today in this world as it's unfolding. So there are these nested systems, not just one set of ethics for everyone, but we integrate our own personal ethics with all of these other layers in order to work in any system that we are inside. So we're responsive and we're also grounded.
And so part of that, just to add to what Pam said, is some of you know I talk a lot about wide-angled empathy and compassion. How can we have not just empathy for ourselves and compassion and for the coachee, but for every individual, system, organization in their story? And how do we apply the golden rule of do unto others how you'd like them to behave to you? How do we apply that to everyone, not just in the room, but in the wider system that we're attending to? And the second thing about developing ethical capacity is what I said earlier on, is how do we not just see the ethical dilemma as a problem to be resolved in supervision or in coaching when a coachee brings an ethical dilemma, but how do we see it as an opportunity to grow our capacity to look at this in a wider lens and from a wider perspective, to look at it from the shoes of different stakeholders or different levels of those nested systems that Pam talked about, and not just look at the individual and their values and their code of ethics that they are part of. And the third dimension of that is, how do we realize that parallel process in supervision isn't just about the coachee doing to the supervisor what the coach doing to the supervisor what the coachee has done to them? It also flows in the other direction. How do we as supervisors role model working with ethical dilemmas the way we're encouraging the coach to do so with their coachee? And that flow downwards and that role modeling is very important, which is why we spend a lot of time in supervision training on growing this capacity to stay with, and not problem solve in supervision, but stay with opening up the field. And then would love to point, for those of you who haven't yet come across it, Michael Carroll's, who is a great pioneer in supervision, and his work with Elizabeth Shaw, and his book on ethical maturity, where he says that we have to grow ethical maturity at several, he now talks about 6 different steps in the journey. Ethical sensitivity, having our antennae alert to ethical issues that don't show up as ethical issues, seeing the ethical dimension of everything that's brought. The ability to make to do ethical decision making, to be able to come at a balanced response to a complex situation. But then not only to make the decision in supervision, but to be able to follow that through. So the importance that just coaching someone and helping them to come to a new insight, you still have a responsibility as a coach and supervisor to ask, so what did you actually do with what we discussed last time? To be able to help them rehearse the conversation they need to have, not just talk about it, but to do it in the coaching session, to do a fast forward rehearsal. But then it's also important to what Michael calls ethical peace. How do we realize that in most ethical dilemmas, there is not a perfect answer? How do we live with the limits to our capacity to respond? There isn't an ethical answer to what the West should have done in response to Russia going into Ukraine. It is a complex situation. How do we live with the notion that we've done our best and we're committed to discovering what works and doesn't work and carry on learning? And the final one, which leads from that, how do we harvest the experience from each ethical challenge to grow our capacity greater so that we can embrace more in with the next client, the next challenge? And that leads on, Pam, to your lovely work in your book around the different aspects of development that ethical challenges can all help with.
Yes, yes. And it's the word development is so key. And one of the things you were saying, Peter, about not solving problems, I often like to say, we are not solving problems, we're helping people grow and develop. That's our work. That's our work. And so that's true for us as coaches and coaches who engage in supervision. And this model, it's really an opportunity to just gain a sense of what the overlapping, generally essential parts of our internal landscape are that are so important for us to cultivate as coaches. And of course, there's no better place, no easier place to do that than in supervision. So, just a couple of these, if I pull these out, the presence are to be able to be present to my own biases, my own judgments, my own wishes to help you, my own, as Otto Scharmer says, my own downloads, to be, that's part of our work, that's part of our development, that's part of our ethical commitment to being at our best. So I can really be fully present to you, to the person I'm coaching. And with empathy, we think about the ability to connect without over-connecting, without getting pulled in, drawn in, taken in by what's happening to our client and losing our way, ending up wanting to overcare. And of course, boundaries and systems, this is your territory so much, Peter. We have to be able to think systemically, see systemically. We have to be able to manage our own boundaries, so I'm not putting on my cape and rescuing someone. And so in this model, the place I think this serves relative to ethical maturity is it helps to give a view into what elements each of us is at the edge of, is currently working, knowing as well that our work never ends on this front.
So with that, we're going to give you an opportunity just for 10 minutes to be in a small group, just so that we're not just talking in theory, we're actually living it. Eve's going to set up some breakout rooms which are randomized, a chance for you just to, first of all, say hello, and then just take 2 minutes each to say, just to share what's the ethical dilemma that you visualized earlier that took you to your learning edge. And for the others to listen to that, not to solve the problem, not see it as a problem, but just to listen to what are all the different levels, as we've been talking about, that need to be connected with that ethical challenge. So Eve, can you?
Indeed so, and you'll have 9 minutes, and then there'll be a minute countdown. So use the minute countdown as your 10th minute. So I'm just opening the rooms now, and there'll be a little clock in the top right-hand corner.
to explore those learning edges. Please, can you either put yourself on video, put your hand up, or press at the bottom where it says reactions and put your virtual hand up. And then Eve will be looking out for you. So if you put your virtual hand up or your physical hand up, we'll then have 2 or 3 people to join us. So come on, this is where you need ethical courage. Ah, Francine. Right, we've got our first volunteer. So if we will highlight Francine, and who else is going to join us? Otherwise, I shall end up picking on people.
Depends.
Oh, Doobie. Doobie's going to join us. Francine, and we just need one more. Who's going to join this lovely small group? Do you see any?
My hand up.
Oh, Rajwant. Lovely. So if we can highlight those 3.
I have to say, I haven't got I think only the host can do highlighting. I'm not able to highlight.
There we go. I'll do it. There we go.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Add spotlight. There's 2. Here comes the spotlight on Pam. And where is Francine? I'm going to find her before I.
Oh, you know,